There is a name that keeps appearing in boardrooms, in the White House, in defense contracts worth billions of dollars, in the media you consume, in the politicians who represent you.
I don't separate the ideas and the business strategy and the technology that much from the people. I think it's all sort of a complicated package deal, but I like companies that are extremely mission-oriented, where there's a strong counterfactual sense of mission.
You probably know the name, but you probably do not know the full picture because Peter Thiel does not want you to. In 2009, he published an essay. In it, he wrote that he no longer believes freedom and democracy are compatible. He did not whisper it, he did not walk it back. He published it and moved on, and nothing happened. No consequences, no exile, no accountability. If anything, his power grew. So the question is not whether Peter Thiel is dangerous. The question is how he got this far before anyone started asking. Here is the deal. Thiel is offering civilization. Hand over your institutions, your financial systems, your governments, your militaries, your media. Hand them over to a small group of brilliant people. People like him, people he has chosen. And in return, he promises progress, real progress, the kind he believes democracy is too slow and too broken to deliver. It sounds like the pitch of a visionary. It is actually the pitch of someone who has spent 30 years buying the levers of power, one investment at a time, one politician at a time, one contract at a time. And the cost to you is your voice, your vote, your institutions, however flawed they are. Every deal Thiel makes follows the same structure. He gets infrastructure, you get a promise. Except Thiel would never say, "Trust me." He would cite a philosopher. He would reference René Girard. He would make it sound inevitable. That is what makes him more dangerous than most. Peter Thiel is not a builder. He has never written the code. He has never designed the product. He has never run the team. What he does is identify leverage and buy it before anyone else realizes what it is worth. He is a philosopher who uses capital as his argument. His worldview was shaped early. At Stanford University, he studied under René Girard. Girard was a French thinker who believed that human desire is imitative. We want things because other people want them, and that civilization is built on managed violence. Thiel studied under Girard in the late 1980s. Their relationship lasted decades. When Girard died in 2015, Thiel spoke at his memorial service. He took that framework and applied it to markets, to politics, to everything. His thesis stated plainly, democracy is mob behavior, dressed up as governance, and the people smart enough to see through it should be free to build something better. That belief is not a background detail, it is the operating system behind every move he has made since. Thiel's first major move was PayPal. On the surface, it is a clean success story. Digital payments, an IPO, sold to eBay in 2002 for $1.5 billion. But look at what PayPal actually was. It was a private financial network designed to move money outside the traditional banking system. Thiel was not just building a product, he was building a proof of concept that you could route around government oversight of money, that a private company could own a piece of the infrastructure that everyone depends on. He cashed out and immediately started funding the next layer. The group that came out of PayPal scattered across Silicon Valley: Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, Max Levchin. They went on to found or lead some of the most powerful companies in the world. This group became known as the PayPal Mafia, and Thiel stayed connected to all of them, not out of loyalty, out of strategy. He was building a network, and networks, as Thiel knows better than anyone, are worth more than any single company. If PayPal was proof you could own financial infrastructure, Palantir was proof you could own something even more valuable: information about people. Thiel co-founded Palantir in 2003, right after September 11th, when the government was desperate for tools to make sense of intelligence data. Palantir stepped in and built surveillance and data analysis software, first for the CIA, then for the military, then for police departments, then for ICE. In the years since, ICE alone has paid Palantir nearly $300 million in contracts, deportations, family separations. Now, here is the part nobody talks about loudly enough. Thiel calls himself a libertarian. He has spoken at length about government overreach, about freedom, about the individual versus the state, and yet he built and profits from one of the most powerful government surveillance tools in American history. He is not a libertarian, he is a libertarian for himself. For everyone else, surveillance is fine, as long as Palantir is running it. Palantir is now valued at over $50 billion. The government is one of its biggest customers. Thiel helped create the demand. Then he sold the solution. Sound familiar? In 2004, Thiel made a $500,000 bet on a college social network. He received roughly 10% of Facebook for it. By the time he sold most of his shares around the 2012 IPO, that bet had turned into over $1 billion. But what he left behind matters more than what he took. Thiel sat on Facebook's board for nearly 2 decades, from 2005 to 2022. During that time, Facebook made a series of decisions. It resisted regulation. It allowed political misinformation to spread. It optimized for engagement over truth. Democracies destabilized. Whistleblowers came forward. Evidence mounted. And in early 2022, Thiel announced he was leaving the board. Not because of any of that. He left to focus on electing Republican candidates, specifically J.D. Vance, specifically Blake Masters, specifically the Trump agenda. He did not leave in shame. He left with a plan. For a man who believes democracy is already broken, Facebook was almost a controlled experiment. What happens when you give people an addictive information machine with no guardrails? You get more polarization, more distrust, more people ready for an alternative, which is exactly the environment where every other Thiel bet pays off. Let's map this out, because this is where it gets clarifying. Thiel's Founders Fund has backed Palantir since the beginning, that is surveillance infrastructure. Thiel's Founders Fund led a $2.5 billion investment in Anduril, that is autonomous weapons, drones, AI-powered defense systems. Thiel co-led an investment in Rumble, that is an alternative media platform built for people who distrust mainstream institutions. And through his political action committees, Thiel donated $15 million to elect J.D. Vance to the United States Senate. That is the largest single donation ever made to a Senate candidate by one individual. Vance is now Vice President of the United States. These are not random bets. Media shapes opinion. Politicians write policy. Defense companies get contracts. Surveillance tools monitor the population. Each piece feeds the others, and Thiel holds stakes in all of it. This is not a portfolio, this is a blueprint. Here is where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Political polarization, accelerated in part by Facebook, drives people toward alternative media. Thiel has already told you he does not think everyone deserves a seat at the table. He published it in 2009 and moved on. Every ideology eventually produces its endgame vision. For Thiel, it was seasteading. In 2008, Thiel co-founded and funded the Seasteading Institute. Its goal was to build floating sovereign nations in international waters, outside the jurisdiction of any government, governed by contract and capital instead of elections and rights. He eventually stepped back from the institute, but the vision he seeded continues. And it tells you something important. This was never about fixing the system. This was about building an exit from it, an escape hatch for people like him, for people who can afford to buy in, while the rest of the system keeps running, while Palantir keeps surveilling, while Anduril keeps arming, while his politicians keep legislating. The exit is for one group. The consequences are for everyone else. Here is what makes this different from ordinary corruption. Thiel-backed politicians sit on committees that oversee defense spending. Thiel's defense companies receive those contracts. Thiel-backed media shapes the public narrative around those politicians. Thiel's surveillance tools monitor the population that might otherwise object. The loop is closed, and it is now inside the United States government. J.D. Vance is vice president. The PayPal network Thiel built is embedded across Silicon Valley and Washington. Palantir has active contracts across nearly every major federal agency. These are public facts. The question is whether we are willing to look at them all at once and say out loud what they add up to. Peter Thiel has been playing a long game, longer than most people realize. And unlike the loud promises of other tech billionaires, Thiel rarely makes promises at all. He just moves, he invests, he funds, he waits. But the pattern is clear if you look. Every move concentrates power. Every investment builds infrastructure that someone has to depend on. Every politician he backs moves the government closer to the worldview he published in that essay. Freedom and democracy are not compatible. He wrote that in 2009, and then he spent the next 15 years proving he meant it. He is not offering you a deal openly. He already made the deal on your behalf without asking. And the basket he has been filling with surveillance tools, weapons companies, politicians, media platforms, and an escape plan for himself. That basket is not yours. It never was. The only question left is whether enough people look at what is actually in it before it is too late to put the eggs somewhere else.